Hello, welcome. This discussion, I am so honored and thrilled to be able to facilitate and have these luminaries in the room. The topic is Gen AI for innovation. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Trauth Taylor, CEO, co-founder of Generative. And we have with us today Ted Bailey, CEO and founder of Data Miner, Glen Coppersmit, Proactive Health at ARPA-H, who is also sort of here today more so as a founder in ML AI over the last decade.
Here as a person, not as a gummy.
We have Michelle Fang, who leads strategy in the office of the CEO at Cerebras, and Paqui Liana, who leads tech strategy at IKEA. We have 4 principles we're going to drill into and sort of go lightning rounds, and hopefully every voice is heard in each part. Okay. Really, for us, we met together, we identified what we see as 4 emerging best practices for leveraging Gen AI to innovate faster and better and in more human-led ways. The number 1 that we want to start with, embrace approaches that democratize innovation. Paqui, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and first of all, I would like to say, I'm super excited to be with you today. It has been for me always a dream to be at MIT, so finally I made it. But yeah, democratize innovation, that's a big word. I think we are talking about this, there is this transition from humans adapting to technology adapting to humans. And I think generative AI, together with other technologies like spatial computing, are offering new ways, new intuitive ways to connect to technology in a new way. And that is, I think, what is opening this door of democratizing the access to technology for innovation. We at IKEA, I've been so proud to, I think, be proactive enough to start experimenting with Gen AI almost more than a year ago, creating a small step. You know, like revolutions start with a small step. But we gathered together with a couple of colleagues to found the first community of interest to work with generative AI. So we had a sandbox to test different ideas. And in this community, we started small, but suddenly become one of the biggest communities at IKEA with more than 600 people working together for AI. And we had people coming from the store towards HR or even, working in operations. And everyone was dreaming about different use cases. And together with that, we were, of course, working with our digital ethics team. So we were able to include from the really beginning ethical frameworks into the system. So that ended up into founding an AI lab. Now our AI lab focus specifically in the supply chain. And we are using, for example, together with the spatial computing, different use cases to improve for example, recognizing damages. And we are working in much more that I hope I will be able to share one day. But back to the democratization, I think that also ended up involving the customer into this change of innovation. So I don't know if this is an IKEA dream, but at least it's my dream, that what about if every single customer can be their own interior designer? So I believe AI is part of that story.
I love it's incredible to hear the sort of the wildfire that catches. And I think that's a story we hear across so many enterprises, that we have so many use cases and so much interest. How do we manage the pipeline and the excitement here? And how do we decide and prioritize Gen AI projects has been a major talk among enterprise over the last couple of quarters, especially as things ramp up more. I think this idea, to me, it's about harnessing ideas from everyone, everywhere, and helping them tell those stories in more effective ways faster. And I'll share one quick story around that. But last year, Generative partnered with the United Nations and the World Food Forum. And as part of their transformation and research challenges, global teams from around the world apply to get research funds. And so we integrated Generative into that process. And these are teams that are literally solving world hunger. Agri-system, food insecurity teams. And with Generative, it turned out that 87% of the research fund winners had used Generative to write their pitch. And we thought, wow, what all of us in the room are probably like, this is a great case study. It's a great ROI story around Gen AI. Yes, it is. But what's more exciting is that's a great use case for humanity. How might we use this technology to leverage and pool and enable people to share their stories, to share their concepts, and create different types of systems? And so I love what you're building, and I'm so enamored by the culture at IKEA to facilitate something like that. Glen, would you speak a bit as an AI ML founder who's exited and then went into the big scene? Share your thoughts on like public intellectualism and research and how that creates access.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And wonderful to be here. MIT rejected me when I applied, and so I'm happy to be back here on stage.
You made it.
There is something as profound as it is to be able to tell the stories. The things that I'm seeing in my corner of the world is access to information, scientific academic publications has become easier. And it's not that they were always there, but they're written by academics. And so the fact that Gen AI has found ways to adapt the grade level, to synthesize stuff, to help you find that darn citation, that you know that this exists somewhere, but I don't know where. And being able to look at some, even rudimentary RAG implementations that get into the academic literature have democratized access to all that publicly funded research. And so there's a couple of really neat things going on here. There's some neat meta-analysis work. How could you automatically run a meta-analysis today about across whatever it is? That one has always been intriguing me. And then the adjustment of grade level of information. And so this ability to change register and meet you where you are to give you the information that you as taxpayers have already paid for.
Incredible. And Ted, you wanted to share around, real-time insights. How is the speed of information sharing changing access?
Yeah, so as background, Gen AI has really changed a lot of what Dataminr, my company, has done in the last few years. And just as background, my company, Dataminr, detects events in public data. As you can imagine, the type of data fragments that you can discover events in are very complicated and hard to understand. And Gen AI for us has been able to actually describe those patterns in very succinct and tangible ways. And recently we've been able to take Gen AI and make event detection combined with ongoing dynamic event descriptions and use Gen AI to actually bring to life ongoing dynamic situations. So I think that Gen AI is up to its billing in its game-changing nature, and even for our company, it's really brought us to the next level.
Incredible. And Michelle, let's hear your perspective from in terms of compute, the chip side of the house, even government. If you can sort of speak, because I know you have this incredible journey where you sort of have helped drive policy change.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So I think when we talk about Gen AI, there are three components to it. There's compute, there's data, and then there's the algorithms. And so Cerebras builds wafer scale chips. What that means is we build this huge chip that's purpose built for AI, and then we put these chips inside of systems, and then we build models on top of these chips. And so the perspective I want to bring today is to democratize AI, you need compute. You need to have accessible compute for people who want to build models, who want to leverage this technology. But in addition to that, you need to have data, and you need to have the right team of people, machine learning engineers, who actually know how to utilize the compute and the data. And so when we talk about a new technology that has emerged, the benefits usually accrue to the first group of people, perhaps concentrated on either sides of the coast. But then when you talk about how do we actually democratize this innovation, you also need to democratize not just GPT or ChatGPT, but also you want to have people who want to own their data, their proprietary data, but also leverage AI within their enterprise. And so where Cerebras kicks in is we provide the compute, wafer scale systems, and then we also provide the machine learning expertise and the people to help you utilize your data to build models that are yours. And so I think that is more of the enterprise focus, where I think right now people know they want to use AI, but they're trying to figure out what metrics, what outcomes do I want with AI? And then after you figure that out, you want to get the different components of the recipe in place so you can actually own and build a model that's yours. And then I think the second component to that is AI and chips are both technology that's very important to the United States. And so I think with that, appropriate governance is also very important in terms of who has access to this compute, who has access to these algorithms. And so without diving too much into that, I think governance is also a point to be discussed as well.
Okay, so number one takeaway, embrace approaches that democratize innovation. All right, ready for lightning round number two? We're speeding on. Responsible AI. So ensuring responsible adoption of AI. What are the adoption barriers and risks? What are some of the best practices around tackling them? I know at Narratize, the very first critical hurdle that we had to overcome for enterprise customers was security, privacy, and from there, explainability, transparency, DEI, so on. And so, Michelle, again, could you actually, let's get in a little deeper. Can you share more about your Senate experiences, what it taught you, and when do you think, what regulations do you see coming around the corner, perhaps?
Yeah. So I'll start off talking a little bit about the Senate, but I think a practical use case might be more helpful. So in the Senate, I worked on AI policy last year for Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut. As part of that, we had a series of hearings where Altman and Dario came in, and the senators got to ask them questions. I think regulation takes a long time. The first part is fact-finding, and so these senators and people on the Hill figure out what is AI. And then afterwards, as technology develops very quickly, they develop appropriate regulation to make sure that the people who are actually using and owning this technology are doing so safely. And so in terms of what's coming around the corner, cannot predict and speak on behalf of the government, but I think a really important debate right now is closed versus open source AI. I think a lot of the very interesting work happens at research labs, but also the open source community is growing very quickly. So how the government decides to regulate closed AI companies versus promoting an open source community that they may have risk within cybersecurity, national security, and like seeing how this debate plays out and preparing adequately, whether you're an open source AI company or you're working at one of the large research labs, I think is one point to focus on. But secondly, and really quickly, I wanted to talk about the risks in terms of like data privacy. So one of Cerebrus's partners is the Mayo Clinic. And so they came to us, they have a lot of unstructured data, patient data, genetic data, and they want to leverage AI within their enterprise. And so when we partnered with them, we basically went in and our researchers helped them identify, here are 2 project areas that we can help you use the data that you have and help equip your cardiologists so they have better interpretations of ECGs. They are able to interpret rheumatoid arthritis better because we are able to use your data and build a model for that. And so with that, we had to get HIPAA compliant. Our systems are all secure and its own cluster in a data center. So if you actually want to work with proprietary data, unlock the value in that, there's a lot of steps of preparation you have to go through before you can actually get to that value. And I think if people want to get there, I think preparing early to get through HIPAA to be compliant for data privacy, I think is a very important first step.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Ted, we'd love to hear your perspective too. If you can share around how is data miner navigating and supporting enterprise, especially in navigating the checks and balances?
Yeah, at Data Miner, we focus our AI on a very particular task of detecting events in the physical world. So in some regards, the task itself is constrained in a way. I think the customers that use our signals that we deliver have put a number of guardrails around their use cases to ensure, ultimately knowing about something in the world is, used for use cases that they would support. But I think, for us, detecting events fast and delivering that knowledge to our customers is sort of a baseline on top of which, a lot of the use cases they want to take, happen. So for us, responsible AI is a bit of a different question because we particularly focus on one task. I want to say one thing that what your comments made me think of. Open source is such a fascinating area. At Data Miner, we use open source models, and I think that ultimately there are security risks, but companies which can adopt open source models and explore models as they come out and adapt the core AI platform that you've built to sort of keep up to speed with the latest innovations. From Data Miner's perspective, our platform has thrived taking that model, and I think, with all of the regulations that come out and all of the guardrails people want to put on the open source community, it's such an incredible catalyst of innovation. And I think so critical to AI really being able to, power all the applications that are possible.
Yeah, as they say, constraints are the best way to innovate. We all need constraints. If you could share the slide, yes, okay, perfect. Okay, let's dig deeper into research though, and I think open source, open access. So we're going to kind of pivot. Number 3 is lean into rapid access to research findings. Research is changing, and the question I posed for all of us to answer is, what does the future of science, tech, and medicine look like now, in 6 months, in 2 years? And I think it's such an exciting question to be sort of on the forefront of getting to answer. As Generative in particular, we support high reliability industries from aerospace to medicine, and it's critical to achieve the highest levels of accuracy possible. And so working with some of the exciting aspects of everything from RAG to graph RAG to all the ways to sort of put guardrails, I think the challenges that still remain, or the ways that research is going to change, is something that we all want to dig into. And one of the biggest challenges is peer review, which is, of course, where all validated research goes to live, outside of the IP-protected insights within corporate. Only 30% of peer review is open access for all kinds of business model reasons related to publishing, but that truly limits what we're able to build in terms of the more fine-tuned models, or the ways in which we help retrieve validated evidence-based knowledge for users. And so, Glenn, could you speak a little bit to some of those challenges specific to healthcare?
Yep. There are certainly challenges within that piece of this. The larger opportunities that I see there, we're going to have to overcome a bunch of those things. But if you look forward to how are we able to adapt to each individual person, we need access to all of the research that has come before this. A lot of this is locked up in various places. But if you think about the dream of what becomes possible there, so where might we be able to go in a couple of years? Thinking through, we heard some talks this morning about personalized medicine. Personalized medicine, I don't know how many times I've heard it here at this conference today. And that's one very specific piece of this that's going to depend on us finding ways to share this data. And so there are great questions around things like rare diseases, where if you have a piece of the puzzle on a rare disease, how are you going to figure out where the rest of those pieces are? And we don't really have an answer for it right now. And this comes down to like that proprietary data that's locked up somewhere is actually, it is perhaps even more valuable if you're finding ways to combine it with other proprietary data. So I don't have the full answer for those things, but when I look forward over a couple of years, if we're able to solve some of those things, we get to look at personalization. We get to look at what does this person right now need in their medical and their psychological and their well-being journey.
Okay, and I think it's fair too to say research it never has to be only relegated to peer review. So Glenn, you created one of the first ways in which we could scan social media data to predict suicide. And share your story a little bit. I just gave away the punchline. I'm sorry. It's such an incredible story.
That's fair. I'll say very briefly, and this was ultimately where the technology didn't get, right? 5 years ago, we had built a bunch of technology around using social media data. It's pretty useful, isn't it?
And there's something in that.
For us, we were trying to predict mental health and well-being, trying to give us what was missing in that space, which was the ability to quantify what was happening. What is happening with this person today? And this just doesn't exist in mental health in a really meaningful way. And so how do you use wearables? Now they talk about digital phenotyping. All of these sorts of interesting technologies were nascent versions of, I guess we would call them SLMs maybe. We used small language models back then, but that gave us the ability to predict with 11 times the accuracy of clinicians if someone was at risk for suicide. And we could do that 6 months before an attempt. And that's sitting on a shelf right now because the world wasn't ready for AI. The world wasn't ready for any of this stuff. And so I don't actually know the path to solving that problem. That actually becomes much, much, much harder, it seems like, convincing clinicians to do something different. Despite that fact, right now we're all sitting here. This doesn't seem crazy to you. If I had said this 5 years ago, it would have been. And so it's an interesting story, and ultimately the core of the adoption challenges they're facing are the human ones. It's not the technology here is easy, relatively speaking. Humans, so hard.
Yeah. Okay, Ted, I'd like you to share your story as well around information briefs and some of the exciting news that your team is doing in that space.
Yeah, so at Dataminr, we've built an AI platform that takes in 1 million different public data sources and text, image, video, audio, sensor streams, and we detect events faster than any other source. Our customers range from the Department of Defense to 2/3 of the Fortune 50, half of the Fortune 100, using these early signals to essentially protect their people, their assets, their digital physical infrastructure, and their communities. We've always used a hybrid of predictive AI for detecting these events, and we pioneered a category called multimodal fusion AI, which stitches together all these different formats to detect events. But we recently integrated generative AI, as I was mentioning before, to describe those events in real time aside the detection. Today, we launched a new technology called Regen AI, which actually is a real-time regenerative description that uses predictive AI not just to detect an event, but to detect ongoing developments as an event evolves and update a dynamic event brief iteratively. Let text formulate and reformulate itself dynamically as the world evolves. And I think that, for a number of use cases that our customers, we did have a slide that showed it, but you're just going to have to look at the Dataminr tagline incessantly, apparently. But what we've learned is, a marriage of predictive AI and generative AI can unlock a lot of things that both fields, independently can't. And I think, Regen AI, our announcement today is one of those types of examples.
So exciting. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to hand it over to you before we close this lightning round.
Yeah. What I wanted to add on top of what Glen and Ted has said is, especially for science and perhaps when we're dealing with proprietary data that an organization has, and that data is their moat. They don't want to give it out. It's very hard to actually get the research done and put in public that actually leverages that data. And this isn't a full almighty solution, but one way to do it that Cerebras helps with is if you look at this, Cerebras has the compute systems, and there are specific forms of models and architectures and problems that we are better at solving. And so our wafer scale system has high memory bandwidth, and so that allows us to look at seismic imaging data, that helps us look at genetic data and process it much more quickly than GPUs. And so what we do is we allow the companies that have proprietary data to keep that data, and we run their data on our secure systems, and after that, we build a model with them, and then we give that model back to them. And so it allows these organizations that have data that is proprietary and siloed to still leverage and use AI to find new research findings from that. And so that is my Cerebras answer in terms of how do we actually unlock research when there's data that's more sensitive and proprietary, and how do we actually get the right technology into the hands of those people? But yeah.
Amazing, incredible. Okay, so just to recap, point number 3, lean into, as much as possible, rapid access to evidence space and research. Okay, number 4, embrace empathetic human-AI collaboration. Paqui, I would love to, you shared a story with us about memory making.
Yeah.
Can you share a bit about that and the ways that we innovate through?
Yeah, well, my personal experience working with generative AI, it's had opened up new dimensions of creativity, connection, and communication. I started exploring generative AI with my grandma 1.5 years ago. She is 19 years old, and she has tremendous stories. So I was calling her every Friday, and we were recreating her memories. We were visualizing memories where we were together, and also playing with them, creating moments of life that she was not able to do, like swimming in the middle of the ocean. So that experience working with her, first of all, bring us closer, and also helped me to explain to my grandmother what I was doing, which was super interesting for me. And now I have this digital gallery with the memories of my grandma, and I see how the technology is evolving. And yeah, now it's like very static, but maybe in a few days, I will be able to enter into the memories of my grandma, like navigate, maybe one day even smell them, the memories, and have some conversations as well with those memories. So it's opened up a completely new world. So what I wanted to say is that beyond my personal story, I believe that technology using AI to go beyond and see things that we cannot see today. And those that are using, never afraid to fail and to learn together with the machine will really unlock a lot of potential. And companies that are empowering those values like curiosity and critical thinking, I think they are the ones that are gonna have the best potential and the best competitive advantage. So for me, to the question, how we ensure empathic AI while we are adopting the technology, for me, it's a question about values. So it's back about to this fundamental question that we need to invest the same or even more in values than AI.
And the values around human-computer interaction, where do you see a balance? Where do you see synergy there? For you, is the human and the machine living symbiotically? Is one leading versus the other? What are your perspectives around that?
Well, I don't know, but I believe in a future where we can use the three different intelligence that we have: the nature, planet intelligence, human, us, our intelligence, and of course, machines. So I think we need to evolve innovation towards a new value system where we can integrate those three intelligence.
And it's going to take so much partnership and
Of
global
course.
thinking to get there. I think too, what I love about the way that Paqui leads at IKEA is to begin with the culture, to begin with the value system, and think of the human. And I think we share this sort of approach to innovation. And at I'll share quickly, at Narratize, we have just launched the world's first story infuser with generative AI. Excited to announce this. The idea began back in my days at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. I was part of a team called My VA, My Story, where we sent story collectors to the patient bedside to listen to the veteran's personal experience. And then we did something crazy. We put that paragraph into the EHR, and we asked caregivers and providers through control groups and test groups to read that story. And those who read it, their provider empathy levels increased, and the patient treatment adherence increased. So we saw, perhaps for the first time in evidence, actually a connection between story, empathy, and a patient outcome. And inside the Narratize platform, now we launched this story infuser, which can be used for so many other use cases besides the one I just described. But the idea is, how might we capture and ping one another to share those stories, to collate them, to give you the chance to be prompted rather than you having to prompt the chatbot, and ultimately be able to collect and share and then collate all of our insights into one. And I think if we try to remember things like we are human because we tell stories, and we remember these types of values, we'll innovate in the right ways. Glen, I know there's some exciting aspects of this too that you wanted to share around, AI being more accurate in some ways. And so how might that change the future of empathy-led medicine?
Yeah, when you told your story infuser story, the thing that immediately hit me was it's amazing what a little bit of empathy does. And so the thing that struck me looking at this is very, very early on when I was still a bit of a skeptic, having lived through this for a good number of years, that colleagues of mine, John Ayers and Mark Dredzy, did some work very, very early on with this boom of resurgence of interest in AI, and took medical questions and had trained asked a simple, this is probably GPT-3, to answer medical questions and then ask their doctor friends to do the same thing. And so they're able to compare what is a human response to a medical question to an AI-generated response to a medical question. And the accuracy, that's the first thing everyone should think about, is pretty good. Okay, and we could get better with RAG, great. But the thing that really got me was that when they were asked to rate the empathy, the AI outscored the humans by quite a bit. And so this really does change the experience of medicine if we do this right. I hadn't thought that this would have been even on the table, but the fact that the machines can take a bit more time, use a couple more words, probably adapt more to the people that are there, personalize the message a bit, perhaps, that could really change, fundamentally take stress out of what is a very stressful experience for many of us. And so there's no greater empathy that might be possible from my perspective than fixing some of that experience. And so the story infuser thing, right? One of the things that is present there for many of those veterans is they don't want to tell that story again. And the fact that we're able to provide some empathy by capturing some of these things and by providing this as part of the medical record by any number of other interactions. This is just one interaction, but what are the other ones in which this kind of an idea can be present and infused, as some might say?
And I would love that I think the data powerhouses up here to share your insight on this, because really what's happened is a revolution in what we can do with data. And I don't mean numerical, right? I mean the story, qualitative, what's possible, even if it's unstructured. Your founding story is one that strikes me, if you can share.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I was in college, 9/11 happened, and I was specifically studying the dissemination of real-time information and how gaps existed that prevented people from essentially getting out of harm's way during that event. When public social media came about 10 years later, I thought, well, this is the type of data, public eyewitness accounts of the world at large, that if you could combine with a machine learning system, could actually solve that gap and actually deliver real-time information in an event like 9/11, where those that were in the tower didn't know to leave the buildings, and ultimately lives were lost. I think that there are many uses of AI that can truly save lives, and ultimately, today, data miners used by the United Nations in 100 different countries, and we've been able to really systematically bring this real-time indication and warning capability across the world.
Amazing. Okay, maybe like one key takeaway for each of us up here that we'd like to leave the room with today. Who would like to start? Key takeaway and or ask of the audience. How about that? Paqui, I'm gonna pick on you.
Okay. Well, I'm improvising now, but I heard one day that if you repeat a lot one concept, a lot, like the meaning of the concept disappear. So today, the main big word is AI. AI. So let's ensure that the AI doesn't forget the meaning, and we work for the better of society and people on the planet to put this technology to serve our needs. I think this is my end takeaway.
Amazing.
I'm happy to follow. I think inspired a lot by Glen and Katie, your story. I think AI is a socio-technological innovation. We cannot purely think about technically we're able to achieve this accuracy. We can pass the US medical license exam at better rates than doctors, perhaps at a certain rate. But what makes AI uniquely powerful is I think technically it can get there, but also it infuses the empathy and the human side in ways that we fall short in society today. And so I think one line that I would want to think more about, I think, is when we think about innovation and AI, these are all buzzwords and there's a lot of hype today, but I think thinking about it as a coherent system between society, between technology, and also between government, that also plays in a role. And so I think making sure the balanced perspective is there and that we push this innovation forward, thinking about it as a socio-technological system.
I would offer that all of you are stressed. I'm stressed over some of the AI. The stuff just keeps moving. And at some point, we are going to turn that corner, and we're going to be able to use this to be reducing our stress. And so I'd offer that for those of you thinking in this space, what are the ways in which you can reduce the stress of the people around you, your users, your academic colleagues, whatever those might be? There is an incredible amount of stress and anxiety in this world, and this sure feels like it's part of the solution. So please, and also, everyone take a breath and take some water. It'll be good for everybody.
Yeah.
I'll be quick because it sounds like we have to end. I mean, I think just thinking about human AI interaction and empathy, I think there's this misconception that something's either AI or it's human, but ultimately the two working together are what makes the outcomes unique and special. At Data we use human AI feedback loops extensively, and I think it really is a combination of the best in AI that could be brought out by human interactions and vice versa. And I think that can get lost in the general conception of it.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to continue the conversation after the panel. We're hiring principal engineers and data scientists. That's my takeaway. Talk to us. We're growing.